We're Hassani and Danielle Pettiford, and we're a real couple with real problems who almost called it quits.
I was very frustrated. I became very disconnected, very jaded and cold.
We have 4 children, going on 20 years of marriage, and we practice what we preach.
Our mission, to change the way couples relate to one another and teach them the skills needed to improve the quality of their relationships. This is the Couples Academy Show.
Well, good morning, everyone. You're watching the Couples Academy Show. This is Hassani Pettiford. As you can see, I'm live in my vehicle, parked, not driving, on my way to the airport, and had to pull over to the side because I had to come on and engage you in a conversation. So listen, headed to the airport, got to be there on time, but we're going to have a conversation this morning. So wherever you're dialing in from, we want to know who you are, what city, what state, what country, so that we can have a good conversation. We're in part 2 of a series. We've been talking about the signs of a toxic relationship. Lakeisha Hines joined me on yesterday. We were talking through some points. We're going to go deeper into it today. But listen, before we get started, I guess you can see my finger over here. Before we get started, make sure you take the time to like, share, and subscribe. Let the people know that we are on. We want them to engage in this conversation so that change can begin to take place all around. All right, so let's dive in, guys. Let's dive in. Some of the signs of a toxic relationship. Remember, if you are experiencing this, it doesn't mean that the relationship is over. It doesn't mean that it's time to give up, throw in the towel, call it quits, and just get the divorce. It just helps you to be aware so you know what to work on. Now, let me just say, if you are experiencing any one of these, it doesn't mean that your relationship is toxic. These are signs of a toxic relationship. Let me give you an example. We hear all the time, I think my husband's a narcissist. He's a narcissist. He's a narcissist. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. Has he taken a test to properly assess him? Does he have narcissistic personality disorder? If not, we got to be careful not to label. Because the fact is, we all have characteristics of narcissism, but it doesn't make us a narcissist. Likewise, we may have some signs of a toxic relationship, but what I would say, the more these signs that you do have, the more of a probability that it could be toxic. So, number 1, belittling. Do you feel belittled by your spouse, or are you the one who's constantly belittling, making your spouse feel less than, always having something critical or judgmental to say, always, in essence, teaching them a lesson, correcting them, reprimanding them? These are not healthy, or these characteristics or behaviors are not healthy when you are in an adult relationship with your spouse. If you're constantly picking and constantly having something always to say, it's a sign that, wait a minute, something's off. Something's off. Okay, so belittling, and some people just have a tendency to do that. Maybe they have this air about them that they're better than, that they're know-it-alls, right? That they're always right and everyone else is wrong and needs to be corrected. But if you find that that is a characteristic that either you or your spouse is exhibiting, it may be an indication that it can be kind of toxic. Number 2, guys, constant fighting. Are you constantly fighting in your relationship? Not just about major things, but about little things. Like, it doesn't matter what the topic is, it's just always this back and forth banter. Can we just have peace? Can we just have a normal conversation? Does it always have to be a competition for who's right? But beyond this competitive, argumentative, debating, I just want to, say what's on my mind and I just want to be heard. A lot of times couples, and we've talked about this before, they've gotten to a place where there's a level of contempt and disgust. There's a huge disconnect. And there's such a hypersensitivity to what one says, does, thinks, reacts, that everything is an issue. Everything is a problem. A lot of times it could be the result of unresolved issues that have never been dealt with, feeling discarded, misunderstood, displaced in the relationship, taken for granted, taken advantage of. And it creates this posture that you now have with your spouse where now everything's an issue. And when you're constantly fighting, the last thing that you want to do is be around your partner. You just want relief. You just want to be free. You just want peace. You don't want to have to deal. And this is why there's such a physical disconnect with a lot of couples when they're constantly on edge. There's always something wrong. And sometimes the fighting can be verbal, but for some, it can become physical. So now it's a safety hazard. So if you find that basic everyday things, there's just always something popping off, there's always an issue, nothing ever seems to just go right, it's a sign that you may be in a toxic relationship. I hope that this is making sense, because I want you to assess yourself. I want you to think about how you're showing up. It's easy to think about your spouse, and boy, he need to hear this, and if she was only on this live stream. But I want you to assess both you and yourself and be honest about your situation. Okay, so let's go into another one. Demanding. A demanding person who always has to have things his or her way, right? They never take no for an answer. They are bullies. They bullguard. Is that the right bullguard? Bogart. They bogart their way into getting what they want. They may be controlling and manipulative. They may browbeat. They may just wear you out with what they want until you cry uncle, until you give in. And then it becomes and then that takes on the nature of the relationship, right? Where the more assertive, the more aggressive, the more I'm going to stick to this until I get my way. The individual who operates in that particular way, it creates a huge issue in the relationship, because here's the deal. The one who's constantly losing and accommodating and going along with, and fine, if that's what you want, fine. There's a level of relationship, and it ultimately impacts and affects how you do your life. And so these are the things that you want to be mindful of, guys. To not take on the posture of being demanding and having to have it your own way, because it simply doesn't work. There's got to be a mutual benefit in the relationship. And if you don't have mutuality in the relationship, then there's inequality in that relationship. So this is what the work days are for, to engage in these conversations, to get on the same page. The next one, never being able to resolve conflict. Is that you? You know, we talk about, Danielle has actually talked about this, how many of us have just agreed to disagree. We don't know how to agree. We don't know how to agree. And if we can't agree on little things, we certainly can't agree on the big things. So you have to find opportunities to come into alignment, to come into agreement on, so that you know how to handle the bigger issues in your life and in your relationship. But when you don't know how to agree, things go wrong. All right. This is a short show, guys. I'm just giving you some tips because I got to get to the airport, so I hope it's helping. But the next thing is controlling behavior. When you're constantly and these are similar, but when you constantly have to be in the driver's seat, things have to go your way, it becomes a huge, huge issue. And so if it's your spouse doing it, then things have to turn around. And then justifying your bad behavior. Like, if you can't be corrected, if you can't see another perspective, if you can't look in the mirror and be honest about your situation and how you're showing up, but you got to justify and rationalize who and how you are, it is a problem, folks. It is a major problem. So these are some signs of a toxic relationship. Tomorrow, when I'm actually in a physical location, we will talk more. So listen, have a conversation with your spouse. Tune in tomorrow so that we can go deeper. Love you guys. Talk to you soon.